This is the Subaru BRZ. You might be wondering why I'm reviewing it when I've already reviewed the Toyota GT86. Well, think of the two cars as being a bit like Diet Coke and Coke Zero. Most people think they're exactly the same, apart from the branding. However, there are subtle differences, so they appeal to slightly different people. Anyway, enough of sugar-free beverages. What about the difference between the BRZ and the GT86? Well, I'll come to that in a bit, because first I want to talk about their similarities, in particular those which may put you off buying a car such as this. So let's start with the negatives. The first is a lack of space in the back. Subarus are normally good for carrying rear passengers, but this one isn't at all. A hot hatch like the Ford Focus ST is way more practical. Then there's the brand image. The Subaru BRZ isn't as posh as an Audi TT, and neither is its interior, especially as parts of the cabin feel like they were made in the 1980s. Normally the car has a green LCD display there, and that clashes awfully with the orange dials, though this one has the optional Pioneer sat-nav, which costs £845. Though if I'm honest, I find it as easy to understand as quantum physics, though to be fair, this flat surface does give you the perfect place to mount your TomTom sat-nav. There we go, perfect. Don't bother with the optional Pioneer amp either, as it eats into the already limited boot space. Another thing which may put you off is the performance, or the relative lack of it. You see, the 2-litre Boxer engine may produce 197 brake horsepower, but that's slightly off the pace these days, and you don't get that low-down thrust that you get from a turbocharged petrol engine. However, the more time you spend behind the wheel, the more you realise the BRZ doesn't really need any more power, because actually, Subaru has got it just right. You do have to rev the engine to get the most out of it, but do you know what, that adds to the fun, and you actually get a great top-end rush, a bit like with a motorcycle, and as you've probably heard, it sounds good too. And because the engine is naturally aspirated, the throttle response is nice and snappy. And let's be honest, 0 to 62 miles an hour in 7.6 seconds, it's not exactly slow, is it? Another great thing about the BRZ is the driving position, because it's absolutely perfect. It doesn't matter whether you're big or small, it feels as though the car's been specifically built around you. And because you sit low, you feel part of the action, yet you still get a great view out. Then there's the controls, which just have so much feel. The brakes, the clutch, and the gearbox. I mean, the gearbox is perfect. In fact, there's no car for the money that feels as engaging to drive as this Subaru, apart from, of course, the Toyota GT86. And that brings us on to the question, which should you have, this or the Toyota? Because while they're almost 99% the same, just like with Diet Coke and Coke Zero, there are some subtle differences. The Subaru suspension is a little bit firmer at the front than the Toyotas, whereas at the back, it's a little bit softer. And it does take a while to notice what difference that has out on the road, but for me, what I think is that the BRZ has slightly sharper and more weighty steering than the Toyota, which feels a little bit looser, more playful, and a bit more tail happy. The Subaru as well, because you've got firmer suspension on the front, does tend to bounce a bit more over bumps at lower speeds, but the trade-off is that at higher speeds, it feels a bit more planted. Basically, if you want the sharper driving sports car, get the Subaru BRZ. However, if you want a car to practice tail slides and go drifting with, get the Toyota. There are some minor styling differences too. At first glance, the cabin is the same. It's well equipped and surprisingly practical. However, the plastic on the dash of the BRZ is smooth rather than textured, and the colour schemes are a bit more restrained. It's the same story with the exterior paint schemes. The BRZs aren't quite as loud as the GT86s. Its grille isn't quite so gaping and as aggressive. The daytime LED running lights aren't integrated into the headlamps. Instead, they're separate down here. Now, I admit those aren't huge differences, but they're still differences nonetheless. Really though, the key difference between the Subaru and the Toyota, apart from the badge, is the after-sales care. The BRZ has a 3 rather than a 5-year warranty. However, to make up for this, it includes something called Subaru Etc., which means that not only will Subaru repair any major faults, but it will also fix any minor dents and scratches to the car, check its wheel alignment regularly, replace any lost keys, and provide a winter tyre fitting service. Also under the scheme, Subaru will wash your car for you once a month, which means you don't have to waste any of your life in one of these things. And do you know what? For me, that could be the clincher.